We're being recorded. So welcome everyone to the Kinnikinnick Native Plant Society's April 2021 program. And it's going to be on City Nature Challenge 2021 Bonner County, presented by George Gehrig. And I will have a little bit to say during the presentation. Kinnikinnick Native Plant Society, founded in 1998 as a chapter of the Idaho Native Plant Society, and became an independent native plant society in 2010. We work with education that would be like what we do today, and with elementary students in our plant walks, our tree tours, and we have a conservation efforts, and also our native plant arboretum at Lakeview Park in Sandpoint. We have a Facebook page and a website. I'll put that in the chat here. If you have questions, you can throw them in the chat, type them in there, and when we get to the end, we'll open it up for people to speak to us. So we're going to start off here, and Shauna, our president, is going to come on and say a few things about upcoming events. Shauna. Oh, Shauna got knocked off the Zoom. Okay, let me just say a few things about programs coming up while Shauna gets back online here. So May 1st will be the BioBlitz for City Nature Challenge Bonner County at the park, at the Pack River Flats Refuge, and I'll have a little bit more about that at the end of the presentation. May 22nd program will be by Steve Holt, Executive Director of the Lake Pend Oreille Waterkeeper. And so that will be interesting as the lake opens up for boating and swimming. June 10th and 12th, Derek Antonelli, who's with us today, will lead a couple fern-focused plant walks at Lost Lake and at Mineral Point, those areas along the west shore of Lake Pend Oreille. And there'll be more information on those plant walks coming up in the future. And then Shauna.
Okay.
Right there.
Yeah. Well, welcome everyone to another wonderful Zoom presentation. We thank Preston for always putting these together. This is either number 4 or 5 or maybe 6. I'm not keeping track, unfortunately. And we're talking about when we can resume going to the community center. Right now, the city of Sandpoint is doing some remake of their offices and using the community center for that. So it probably won't be until September, October, maybe November. I don't know. We'll see. But when we do that, Preston is working on combining in-person and Zoom, so people can still link in if they can't make it to the community center. Ken is with us. The new cabin is getting closer to beginning to be built. Ken and Mark Stockwell have spent lots of time, numerous hours, preparing for this. So we're looking forward to it. So thanks guys for putting that together, or beginning to. Sunday, May 2nd is the Arboretum cleanup day from 10 to 12. Bring your own tools, but they'll have coffee and some goodies. So come and help us get that place back into order, because we have some tree tours for 3rd graders that'll be at the end of May. We've done that for years and have been very successful. The next big thing is the plant sale, which is June 5th. This is Saturday, 9 to 11 at the Arboretum. So we're looking forward to that. We didn't do it last year, and that's always a sad situation when you can't do something you love doing. Anyway, come join us for the plant sale. And then just a reminder that memberships for KNPS will be July 1st through June 30th. But anybody who joins right now, it'll go all the way through to June of 2022. So love to have you become a member. And I think that's all that I have. Any questions from anybody?
Most of these events will be emailed through the listserv and also on our Facebook page and our web page. So those will be available to access. Okay, let's see. One other thing I wanted to do is make a plug for our plant book, our landscape book. So this is Landscaping with Native Plants in the Idaho Panhandle. And it's a great time to get this book if you don't have it, because it's spring and it's time to put in new plants in the garden, and native plants are the way to go. So that's available in bookstores all the way from Bonners Ferry down to Moscow. So lots of places to pick it up. And you can find out where those are on our website. Okay, so today we're going to be talking about this very interesting project that comes out of California originally, called City Nature Challenge. And we'll be presented by George Gehrig, one of our KNPS members. And George is also a Idaho Master Naturalist, a member of the Pend Oreille chapter of the Idaho Master Naturalist, and is a IDA H2O Master Watershed Steward. He's retired a few years ago after a career in academic medicine, and now volunteers and advocates for environmental nonprofits. His primary interests are biodiversity and watershed health at the landscape level. So I think with that, George, will get started. I will share the screen. Find the right thing here. All right. So for any more information about City Nature Challenge Bonner County, you can contact George, your email here, or myself. The presentation today will be divided into 4 parts. First one, what is City Nature Challenge? And then more specifically, what is Bonner County's role in City Nature Challenge? I will talk a little bit about the importance of citizen science, and then George will tell us how to participate using the iNaturalist app on our phones, and then just briefly about what kind of projects we could do next using citizen science. So with that, go back. George, it's your turn to go.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for zooming in, and thank you, Preston, for all the work that you did on putting this PowerPoint together, and all of the help that you've been on this project from the very beginning. So thank you, sir. Next slide, please. What I'm going to do is probably a little bit different from other City Nature Challenge videos that you can see and that we'll provide links to. It's more explaining the nuts and bolts of the challenge. It started in 2016 as a competition between San Francisco and Los Angeles. That's become an international event. It's run by the community science teams at the California Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. It's an annual 4-day global BioBlitz in late April and early May. That's not necessarily a good time frame for northern latitudes, but we're kind of stuck with it. And we're going to just try our best to make as many observations as we can, although if it was conducted later in the year, and maybe there will be additional BioBlitzes for North Idaho later, we'll be able to make many more observations. It's a friendly competition and collaboration. And just to define it, a BioBlitz is a crowdsourcing citizen science effort to record as many species in a designated area and time as possible. Next slide, please. Here's a map showing the challenges for last year. There were about 250 around the world. Most of them are urban centers, and that's why it's called a city nature challenge, although as more challenges are created, they are beginning to show up outside urban cores. Last year, there were over 41,000 participants, making over 815,000 observations. Of those, over 32,000 species were observed, and of those, over 1,300 were rare, endangered, or threatened. Next slide, please. So this is a really powerful graph showing the power of city nature challenges to engage people. It shows the growth of observations over time, and every year, the number of observations has been increasing. Like I said, last year there were about 250 sites. This year they're going to be over 350. And the City Nature Challenge is the largest annual biodiversity recording event. And as I said, it resets the baseline of observations coming into the iNaturalist platform. It really does inspire people to get out and observe nature, and it highlights the value of documenting biodiversity and inspires people to become year-round biodiversity observers. Next slide, please. Here are some goals and objectives to connect people to local nature. And, you know, here I would just like to say that the goal is to document what's there, but a secondary goal that's really not spoken of as much is to make observations of what's no longer on the landscape. We, through development and fragmentation, have basically swept certain species off the landscape. And so it's important to not only recognize what's there, but also what's no longer there, or the species that are struggling to survive in their native habitat. To build community in person and online, to collect biodiversity data available to use for science, management, and conservation, to grow global volunteer biodiversity documentation, to have fun through friendly competition, and to motivate people around the world to find and document wildlife. And the three basic objectives are to make the most observations of nature, to find the most species, and to engage the most people. Next slide, please. So as I said, it's basically a collaboration between the California Academy of Sciences and the Natural History Museum of Los Angeles County. And the City Nature Challenge has a website, and we have the URL there listed. It's a tremendous resource. It's full of curated documentation on how to do BioBlitzes and how to run a City Nature Challenge. The three people that are most responsible are Allison Young, Lila Higgins, and Amy Jaker-Jones. They begin recruiting In the late summer and early fall, they send out a list to anybody that's interested and encourage people to at least find out what a City Nature Challenge is about. And if you indicate that you're interested, then they send out a timeline and document certain milestones that you have to achieve. And they set up monthly meetings. And they just hold your hand and guide you through the process. And they keep reminding people like us, new to the challenge, that to just try it. And you'll learn from whatever you do. You're going to make mistakes. And certainly I personally have made mistakes probably along the way. But I know that that we're laying a really good foundation for next year and succeeding years. Next slide, please. So just to stop for a second and lay out a taxonomy. At the order level would be citizen science, and there are just tons of citizen science projects out there. I was aware of some. I participated in a City Nature Challenge, a BioBlitz, and citizen science projects, but until I retired and I had time to kind of pursue what's available, I really had no idea. And the opportunities are just amazing for people to get engaged and to add capacity to nonprofits that don't have the personnel to collect data. Below that, at the family level, would be BioBlitzes, and below that would be the City Nature Challenge. And again, the City Nature Challenge is the largest and best known example of a BioBlitz. And throughout the presentation, I'm going to just be referring to the CNC and CNC organizers. And when I mention that, I'm talking about Lila and her group and the 350 individual organizers that are part of the International City Nature Challenge. They have very minimal requirements to participate. One of them is one of the first milestones is to pick a boundary. So we chose Bonner County, and once you chose the boundary, then you were able to fit your name into the standard nomenclature that's used for these challenges. So for us, our kind of the scientific name would be City Nature Challenge 2021, Bonner County, Idaho. And we've just abbreviated it to be CNC BC. And when I talk about the CNC BC, I'm talking about our challenge and the individual participants, the organizers of our challenge. Next slide, please. Here you can see the supporting organizations that are part of the challenge this year. We have had monthly meetings beginning in the fall. And we've just gone over the timelines and the milestones that needed to be achieved. And it's been a really great collaborative process. Got to thank Mike Bauer at the library for organizing the Zoom meetings. The Idaho Master Naturalist, particularly Pat Myers, and Preston has just been absolutely invaluable in this whole process. The flyer was put together by Casey McCormick of Idaho Fish and Game, and it basically has all the information that you need. It lists the dates of the challenge and the basic steps that you need to participate. Next slide, please. So once you've achieved the basic milestones, the CNC organizers then create a project. And as you can see at the bottom, it's on the iNaturalist website. And they basically, this is what they provide for you. In addition to all of the other documentation that they've created and all of the documentation that's available from other organizers that has been shared. Basically, what you get is this project page. I've looked around at other projects, and other projects really don't take advantage of this page. Basically, all they provide is some information in the About section. But it's really, one really powerful feature is the ability to create journal entries. Next slide, please. So over the course of the months, I've been basically starting in March, I've been adding journal entries, and it's here that I've tried to document everything that I've done and share all of the tremendous resources that I think are valuable for anybody who's interested in the project. Next slide, please. So if you get under the hood, if you actually go to the iNaturalist site, then you're able to see the observations that have been made. In the top left-hand corner, you can see the world view, and you can see as of a couple days ago, there were over 62 million observations made by over 1.5 million people, and over 330,000 species have been observed around the world. You can manipulate this data in lots of different ways. For example, in the top right-hand corner, you can just choose a state. So these are the observations in Idaho. In the bottom left-hand corner, I typed in Bonner County, Idaho. And as you can see, as of a couple days ago, there were 3,887 observations made by 450 people. And hopefully, like what has happened all over the world, what the City Nature Challenge will do is to encourage people to get out and make observations. And so this year and every succeeding year, we should have a new baseline. So hopefully, the number, I think that according to the Census Quick Facts site, there are 45,000 people in Bonner County. So hopefully the number of observers is going to increase, hopefully by an order of magnitude. So we'll get the word out, and a lot more people will be out on the landscape making observations. Pardon me. In the bottom right-hand corner, if you zoom in, then you're able to see the actual observations. You'll be able to see who made them and the date and time that the observation is made and what actually was observed. Next slide, please. So as the CNC organizer meetings happened and more sites were added and approved to this City Nature Challenge, I noticed that we had organizers down in Boise and Red Lodge, and we began communicating and interacting and collaborating. Special shout out goes down to Christian Nojeski, the community volunteer specialist for Boise Parks and Rec, and Courtney Long, the assistant city planner in Red Lodge. And so we began, as we collaborated, we decided to create our own little mini competition. And the folks over in Red Lodge are really, really excited about this, and they had some money. And Courtney suggested that we could make a trophy, and we're going to call it the Northern Rocky Mountain Challenge Trophy. And the challenge that gets the most people out per capita will win this trophy. And it hasn't been made yet, but once it's made, I'll share an image of it. But the winner will be able to keep the trophy for an entire year. And if we win, Mike Bauer at the library is going to accept it on behalf of the CNCBC. Next slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry, Preston, before you go on. I need to mention that we each chose a mascot for our challenge. Red Lodge chose a moose. Boise chose a peregrine falcon, and we decided on a Sasquatch. Next slide, please. So besides the project page, again, where I put a lot of great content, the CNC organizers leave it up to the individual challenges to create social media content. And we talked about Twitter and Instagram and some other social media sites, but we decided on creating a Facebook page. The About section has some great content, but you're limited to what you can put there. So I've tried to kind of synchronize the Facebook page and the project page. But if you had to choose one for content, I would recommend the project page. Next slide, please. So being new to Idaho and North Idaho, I really didn't know the plants and animals that were here. So what I did was I went to the Fish and Game's Bonner County observation list and downloaded a list of the species. And I sorted it by taxa and then subsorted it by state rank with the most threatened species first. And then I took the numbers and divided it by the weeks in between then and the challenge. And I came up with the however many numbers of species per day that I would highlight. And in addition to just providing a link to the species and species information, I tried to find other interesting information, articles, webinars, anything that related to that species or group of species as it related to Idaho and hopefully specifically North Idaho and specifically Bonner County. I tried to include that with each of the daily posts that I've been making. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we chose a Sasquatch as our mascot. The Pondere chapter of the Idaho Master Naturalist created a cutout of Sasquatch. We've named her Sassy. She's about 7 foot tall, made out of plywood. And so she's kind of skinny and she's light enough to be able to move around. So we're going to be putting her in 4 different places around the county over the 4 days of the competition. The first person who makes an observation of Sassy and finds 20 unique species can win a small Sasquatch trophy. In the bottom right, you can see the daily trophy. It's called the CNC BC 2021. And so there's 4 of those. And then there will be one larger trophy for the person who makes the most observations. And we've called that the CNC BC Champ 2021 trophy. On Monday, May 10th at noon, the CNC organizers will present the results of the challenge. And then at 4 o'clock, Mike Bauer at the library is going to be hosting a Facebook Live event where we'll announce the winner of our local trophies. All right, Preston, I think that's the end of my part of this presentation. So over to you.
Okay, sorry about the
No problem.
jerky with this because I'm working off a laptop with one monitor and sharing my screen. So, okay, just wanted to talk briefly because we want to spend the time on the City Nature Challenge, Bonner County. But as George pointed out, City Nature Challenge and BioBlitzes are a type of citizen science. And some people in the academic world have preferred to change it to community science. Some call it community and citizen science, so as not to exclude anyone from participating. You don't have to be a citizen to participate. You just have to be a member of the human race to be part of community science. Also, it's also called other things. Crowdsourced science is one. Public participation in scientific research, that's a bit wordy. Volunteer monitoring, participatory action research. And it's amateur rather than professional scientists, although many professional scientists after retirement, me being one, become citizen scientists or community scientists. And so there's a lot of crossover between people that are, amateurs or people who have learned a lot on their own, and professional scientists and retired professional scientists. The first actual community science originated with the Audubon Christmas bird count in 1900. So we're at 120 years of citizen science in the US. So, and many of us participate in this bird count in our homes. One of the areas, or one of the types of citizen science that we have here in Bonner County, in North Idaho, is the Lake Pend Oreille Waterkeeper Water Quality Monitoring Program. And this is a little bit different than a BioBlitz, because this is a planned sampling and analysis of the quality of the water all the way from Albany Dam down to Bayview. And there are 13 sites. And each month, the third Tuesday of each month, beginning in May through September, citizen scientists, volunteers go out in their boats, kayaks, canoes, and with a water sampler, much like is held here, we collect water samples and they're taken to a lab in Coeur d'Alene and analyzed. Some of the analysis is actually done at the Waterkeeper office at the Cedar Street Bridge. And Patty and I have been participating in this for 5 years. It's in a 10th year now. And so this will provide a baseline for any changes in the water quality in the Lake Pend Oreille Basin. It specifically required that training in proper sampling methods are undertaken, because the EPA has to approve the data that goes from this citizen science project to the Idaho Department of Environmental Quality, which then can react to changes in the water quality in our area. And they already have one of those in a location called the Boyer Slough. There is another program that is also a volunteer program, citizen science program, called IDA H2O. And it's a master water stewards program, volunteers. And it's run through the University of Idaho Cooperative Extension. And they collect basic water quality data for Idaho streams. And they're kind of spread out all over the state. So that's another great program. There are actually, in looking at this, there's so many organizations in the United States that are involved in citizen science. One of the main ones is called citizenscience.org. It's home of the Citizen Science Association, and it actually publishes a journal called Citizen Science Theory and Practice that comes out periodically. And its purpose is to advance knowledge through research and monitoring done by, for, and with members of the public. There's also another organization called citsci.org. And this organization empowers individuals to pursue their own scientific interests through developing and implementing projects using the scientific method. So this is where actual citizen science can develop their own projects. The US government has a citizen science website to help federal agencies provide more information for research purposes. And one of the great advantages of citizen science is that because of the high cost of employees and that the government agencies or universities, research institutes have to spend on research projects, having volunteers willing to go out and help them collect this data, these data is just invaluable. So this website is designed to accelerate the use of crowdsourcing and citizen science across the US. And there is actually an act of Congress called the Crowdsourcing and Citizen Science Act of 2016 that mandates the government's participation in this. Another one is called SciStarter. And this one is an online citizen science hub where there are thousands of projects searchable by location, topic, age level, that have been registered by individual project leaders or imported through partnerships with federal agencies, NGOs, and universities. So there are all these organizations out there that are participating in citizen science. I wanted to give you a couple examples of how this is used. And this is a new area. This is a lot different than going out with an iNaturalist app. This is called environmental DNA. And what this involves is biomonitoring using DNA that is shed from organisms, either collected from the soil, from water, or in the air. And those samples could contain first feces, spores, pollen, or leaves. And we actually have had our own eDNA project here in North Idaho. The Selkirk Grizzly Bear Monitoring Program is one such program like that. And if those of us who heard the February 2019 program by Don Gay, he's a retired US Forest Service wildlife biologist. He talked about the Selkirk Grizzly Bear DNA project. And what's shown here is the red dots on this map are where they have collected DNA samples from fur that has been shed on enclosures or on tree trunks, and that they've analyzed, and they've been able to track the flow of the genetics, the sex of the bear, and the whole its parentage and all that. So it's been very, very valuable. Another organization that's doing a lot is the University of California has what's called the Cal eDNA program. And this is to collect biodiversity data in response to the impacts of climate change. And California being one of the biodiversity hotspots in North America, the University of California Conservation Genomics Consortium launched this a few years ago to engage citizen scientists in collecting environmental DNA. And this could be, in this case, it's post-wildfire biodiversity, and the volunteer is collecting soil samples that will then be analyzed by the personnel at the research area at University of California, and then they will analyze this and post the results so that they can follow the effects of wildfire. And they have these projects running all throughout the state. One of the other really nice things about these citizen science programs is that not only do they engage you in the collection of samples, but they also provide you with the information that is gleaned from the research, so that citizen scientists that participate can go in and actually see the progress that has been made through their efforts. So that's a real nice feature of it. And this kind of work can really lead to some important discoveries that we wouldn't have been able to make without the efforts of citizen scientists, community scientists participating in it. And one such result was published recently in the journal Science just a couple months ago. And it's about butterflies that have been documented by community scientists across the American West. And this is, I find this fascinating. As a scientist, I find this very fascinating. So what they did is they integrated expert or professional science data with community science data in 3 different approaches that had been taken over the course of 40 to 45 years. And one of those was a long-term transect study, which was basically taken from the San Francisco Bay Area to the Sierra Nevadas by an entomology professor from UC Davis. And over 45 years and in retirement, he's continuing to make this transect study of butterfly observations from the Bay Area to the Sierra Nevada. The second panel here shows the sampling by the North American Butterfly Association. And their volunteers for 40 years, and these would be trained volunteers, much like the waterkeeper volunteers. Those volunteers have gone out for 40 years and have been monitoring butterflies throughout the Western US. And the third panel showing iNaturalist. This would be people just taking pictures of butterflies and posting them on iNaturalist. And when the scientists in this study combined the results from the transect study, the North American Butterfly Association samples, and the iNaturalist, they found that over the 40 years, there's been this decline in the number of butterflies in the Western US. And they've been able to, through those results and linking that with changes in climate, they've associated that with warming during the fall months. So there can be some real valuable insights that are gained by citizen science participation. I want to point out one of the big international citizen science websites is called Zooniverse. It's the largest platform, they claim, for people-powered research, and it has more than 1 million people around the world that work on this. Anyone can be a researcher, they claim. It accelerates important research. Volunteers and professionals make real discoveries when they work together. And I think that's an important thing to keep in mind when it comes to citizen science. Some other citizen science opportunities include eBird. Some of you know of that program, and then also eButterfly. And I'll go back up because I'll turn the time back to you, George. Oh, before we start this, we were going to do a poll. So I'm going to launch this poll and we're going to start. Let's see how this goes for everybody. So there's 3 questions here. I'll give folks a minute to look at those. And still getting folks coming in here. Couple more left. Okay, let's, oh, got 20 out of 22. That's probably a good point to end. That's a good selection. Okay. So it appears, the first question, have you participated in the citizen science project? More of us have than have not. If you participate in a BioBlitz, not as many of us have. And finally, have you used either iNaturalist or Seek? And yes, it's been 60% use of those apps. So that's good information to have. Let me end this. Get that out of the way. George.
Okay. How do you participate in the City Nature Challenge? It's ridiculously simple. All you have to do is download the free iNaturalist app, then go to iNaturalist.org and set up an account. You must be at least 13 years old to do so. You sign in. When you go out, you just open up the app and point your smartphone to flora and fauna or evidence of flora and fauna like tracks or scat, antlers. It can be really anything. The emphasis, though, is on wild flora and fauna. If you do that anytime between April 30th and May 3rd, and you're in Bonner County, your observation will be automatically included in this CNCBC. You don't have to be a resident of Bonner County. You just have to be within the boundary of Bonner County to be able to participate. When you make an observation, if you have location services turned on and you're connected to the internet, it will automatically upload your observation to our project. If you're not online, then you can, whenever you get connected again, then you can upload your photos. Or if you have a digital camera, for example, you can bring it home and upload the photos to iNaturalist that way. In between May 4th and May 9th, those individual observations are going to be verified. And the objective is to get to research grade. And you'll be able to watch, you'll be able to help identify other people's observations, or you'll be able to watch experts like Gehrig and in the folks in the Native Plant Society that are plant experts that will be able to help nail down the plant to the genus and species level. Next slide. Where can you do it? Well, if you don't do anything else, just go out into your backyard. There's going to be a video that we're going to provide a link to someone who has just made observations in her backyard, and she's become enthralled with the whole process of BioBlitzes and using iNaturalist. You can go out to city parks, or we're encouraging people, especially if you want to find sassy, to get out into outside the city limits, and to just be astounded by the richness of the biodiversity that's in this area. Next slide, please. So we didn't really tell you how to use iNaturalist, and the reason is because other people who are much better at it have already done an amazing job. So here's a little bit of homework for you. I've tried to curate the best links. You know, a good place to start would be at the Getting Started page of iNaturalist. There's some short, really great video tutorials. The education toolkit breaks it down by age group, and it provides exercises for parents or school teachers to engage kids at particular grade levels. Probably it would behoove you to read the I think it's a 4 or 5 page frequently asked questions document PDF file produced by the Cal Academy. Next slide. And I'd like to particularly highlight these resources. If you want to actually see how to use the iNaturalist app, please go to Kristen's Zoom recording. She did it, I think, a couple weeks ago, and she just did an excellent job. So it's about an hour, and it's well worth your time. Courtney, our collaborator over in Red Lodge, put together a really great short YouTube video that I recommend. One thing that we haven't talked about is what I call iNaturalist baby brother or baby sister, Seek. It's an incredibly powerful application. You don't have to be a certain age to use it. One of the things that children can do, for example, to help participate in the City Nature Challenge would be to have the Seek app open, and they can run around and identify things, and their parent or guardian can then come along and make an observation with the iNaturalist app. I don't have very many observations in iNaturalist, and that's because I've used Seek. So I highly recommend you looking at this short little video. And another excellent resource that was produced by another group is this Connect with Nature using iNaturalist and Seek. And it's a 5-part tutorial, and it's just really, really well done. And the last one, as I mentioned, there was a woman who's turned into a really robust citizen science. They made a YouTube video of her just exploring nature in her backyard. So that's a really excellent resource. And so, again, there's much more out there. I've tried to include it all on the Facebook page in the About section, or the project page on in the journal entries on the project page. But if you need any additional information, please reach out to me, and there's a good chance I don't know the answer, but I can definitely find the answer for you. So next slide, over to you, Preston. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there's one more. The key is to take a good photo. That's the key. And the closer you get and the more details you can get in your photo, the better. Some of these species are so close that you need to get fine detail. So get as close as you can, and to try to shoot from multiple angles. Try to get, for example, if it's a tree, take a picture of the entire tree, and then take closer pictures of the individual parts of the tree to help with the identification. And it's really important to get sharp, in focus pictures. So one of the things that you can do, I recommend that you do, is to download the Seek app and to just get out and practice. It will give you a good idea of how close that you need to be able to get identification down to the genus and species level, and what angle or that you need to shoot the observation at to be able to make a good identification. All right, Preston, I think I'm done. It's over to you.
Okay. Well, I just want to conclude, and we'll open it up for questions and discussion about what comes next. What kind of projects are possible for us, either individually or as a Native Plant Society. Obviously, what the BioBlitz is, the City Nature Challenge, is a type of survey of biodiversity. Much of what iNaturalist does is record biodiversity. And of course, that can be used by researchers to make conclusions about the effects of various events on biodiversity. And one of those is response to climate change. And the butterfly study was a great example of examining the effects of climate change on the biodiversity of butterflies. Connectivity, how animals move, the environmental DNA grizzly bear study looks at the way grizzly bears move around in the Selkirk Mountains, because there's a recovery plan that is in place for the United States and Canada to restore grizzly bear populations in the northern Selkirks. So that's another area of research, or another area where citizen science can be placed. Ecosystem services, these are like the resources that we as humans take advantage of. The Lake Pend Oreille Water Keeper Water Quality Monitoring Program is a way of monitoring the water resources that we love and depend upon. And the other, I think, important, maybe among the most important aspects of community science is the involvement of community members in science for successful conservation management. And this engagement, I think, is really important for people to buy into the conservation efforts that we need to undertake. So I think that's a really important aspect. There are other iNaturalist projects in our area. One is Idaho Flora, and it's it's the whole state, and you can see here 1,592 species and 1,164 people participating in this project. Another one is North Idaho Biodiversity. Look at this, 36,574 observations made by 2,422 observers. So there's so when you go to iNaturalist, you can join these projects. You don't have to join the City Nature Challenge one, because that's automatically attributed to it when we take our observations from April 30th to May 4th. But these projects you can join and contribute to. Another one that just popped up for me through Washington State University, researcher there is looking at Western red cedar dieback. Apparently there's some problems with dieback of Western red cedar in the Pacific Northwest. And so he's really interested in anyone that sees dieback of Western red cedar, that they recorded and that they uploaded into this iNaturalist project. So we're gonna take time for questions and discussion coming up next. You can also email the Idaho Master Naturalist website here for Sandpoint for questions. But we also wanted to announce that the Kinnikinnick Native Plant Society will participate formally in this. Now we can individually go out and do our own participation, but we're planning on a group gathering at the Idaho Fish and Game's Pend Oreille Wildlife Management Area at Trout Creek on Saturday. That's a week from today at 1 p.m. I know the farmers market is starting up, and many of us want to get there and get our plant starts for the garden. So we're moving to the afternoon. So many of us have been there, left on the Trout Creek Road off of Highway 200 just after the Pack River Bridge, and they're easy trails. And Derek's done a great plant survey here in the past, and it's just a beautiful place to go out and wander around and make observations for as long as we wish. So just show up at 1 o'clock and join in. And with that, I'm going to stop sharing screen. And okay, let's see. We've got a few things in the chat here. Let me start with one. For you, George, can you let everyone know how hints will be provided for locations of Sassy from Pat?
Yes, we're going to post location hints on the Facebook page the day before.
Okay. Okay. Paul says that I use iNaturalist to document life forms when I'm doing forest watch. When they get research grade, when they get research grade. It is hard for the U.S. Forest Service to deny the observation. Looking forward to participating. Thanks, Paul. Can you, George, say a little about research grade versus unidentifiable, or how iNaturalist categorizes the quality of the observation?
You know, the links to the presentations that I've included do a really, really great job at explaining that. But basically, a research grade, an observation gets to be research grade if it's confirmed by someone else, and if it's more than just one person. 2/3 of the people that suggest a genus and species, 2/3 of the people that are commenting have to agree on it for it to achieve research grade status. I hope that answers the question.
Okay, great.
I think, you know, one of the many things that we didn't talk about that are really well explained in the documents and the videos is captured versus captured and cultivated. Again, for the purposes of iNaturalist and the research that's done by folks who use the iNaturalist observations, they're mostly interested in wild organisms. So if you have like a domesticated animal or a plant, even though it's a native plant, and someone has introduced it onto their property, you need to indicate that it's captured or cultivated. But beyond that, you know, if you have a date and time, a location, and like a photo, the app will suggest a likely genus or species. If you don't know, and if all you know it's a plant, then people can come behind you and specifically identify what genus and species it is. And then if other people, identifiers, experts, and there will be people from around the world commenting on our project observations. If 2/3 of those agree on the identification, then it becomes research grade.
Gehrig makes a good comment here that iNaturalist allows several photos to be taken for each observation. And so for plants, you can take advantage, just as you said, George, in the presentation of leaves and flowers, of bark. This makes the identification much easier. So that's you know, with insects, it's tough to get one good picture.
Right.
With plants, we can get around the plant at various angles and take pictures of the different parts. It's a lot easier for us. So now my question is regarding invasive species, because they could be not cultivated, probably not cultivated. Well, sometimes we cultivate invasives that we shouldn't, but would they count for the City Nature Challenge?
I'm sorry, my attention was directed to the
It's about invasive species.
right.
You know, if we see, you know, tansies, you know.
Yes, and that's kind of a subset of the utility of iNaturalist. A project, for example, could be created for just the identification of invasive species in Bonner County. Yeah, so it doesn't have to be native. It just has to be wild.
Okay, that's great. That's really good. There was a question here. Let's see. We've done all that. The question from Patty about, does the plant have to be endangered or a special species? No, it does not. It can be any living species, except for the cultivated and captured have to be so indicated. That's correct?
But that brings up a really interesting point. You know, for endangered species, I don't know if it's automatically done, but you can obscure the location of your observation just so that folks don't go try to collect it, for example. And just kind of as a funny side note, one of the things that I was hoping to use iNaturalist for, since I'm new to the area, was to find locations of morel mushrooms. But you know, when you search for morels, you don't find very many observations, and that's because people don't want to share the locations. So just because you see it doesn't mean that you know you need to let everybody else know where it is. So.
Also, another important point here is that iNaturalist allows bird identification by sound recordings.
Right.
And I'm thinking of the ospreys that are back in our region now, because they make a very distinctive sound, and other birds as well, of course.
Right.
Okay, anything else?
Yeah, you just have to, you know, you have to have the right device. And it's got to be, for example, in as far as a recording, you have to have a pretty good recording, and you know, be able to not have it cluttered by other, you know, background noise, which would make the observation more difficult. And, you know, talking about observations and the difficulty in making some observations, one of the suggestions that I read for getting insects is not to kind of chase a pollinator around as it flits from plant to plant, but just to sit in front of a plant, a flower, and wait for the insect to show up. Yeah, a lot of these animals aren't going to be cooperative, and so, you know, getting a good clear picture is going to be frustrating. But you know, the organizers just say do the best you can, upload it, and hopefully somebody will be able to come along and identify it.
Great. So you're
Preston,
sharing.
I have a comment or two. One of them is that I put in there, can we get a PDF copy of the presentation? It's got a lot of links there, and it'd be nice to have that as a PDF.
Right.
Yes.
What I'll do, is this Pat? What I'll do
Yes.
is I'll send a PDF to everyone that registered for today's program. And then if you want it, you've got it. If you don't, you can delete it.
Great, thank you. And then George wanted a reminder about critter cams.
I'm sorry, Pat, could you say that again?
Before we started, you said something about critter cam photos. Can you talk about that?
I'm sorry. Oh, game camera photos. Is that what you said?
Yes.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Game camera photos, and you know, if you set up your game camera correctly, it's going to date and time stamp it. So yeah, make sure that you get those images off the game cam and upload them to the site, and they're absolutely included. That's one of the one of the things that hopefully we'll be able to do next year is to more widely publicize it to a lot of the folks that are off grid or that live in the mountains and probably have game cameras. I'd like to also see if Idaho Fish and Game would allow us to use some of their game cameras next year. And hopefully too, we'll be able to really include the schools and the school age kids in the project.
Just a clarification for folks that may not live in Bonner County, that you don't have to live in Bonner County to participate as long as you take your observations in Bonner County. So if you go, if you live close to the county line with Kootenai County, you just go into Bonner County Park, nearby, and take your observations, and they'll count. So that's the only thing is you have to be within. And I don't know. I mean, it's a GPS line that they designate as the county lines.
Right.
Is that correct, George?
That's too bad because it's so. I have so many pictures of my backyard because I think I'm right on the edge. We're Bonner County, but Spirit Lake is our address.
Yeah, and I think it doesn't matter what your address is. I think it just matters where your GPS geotag is taken. So when you have your location services on your phone turned on your camera, when you take a photograph, it geotags it, and it will. And so if you're within the Bonner County boundaries, then that geotag will verify that it is an acceptable observation.
Right.
Is that? I think I've got that.
Okay.
Another question about, can insects be collected by net, like a sweep net, put in a bottle and then photographed and released?
Absolutely. You in the video that Courtney Long made and that we linked to, she talks about that. But yeah, absolutely. Whether it's a sweep net or just a jar. I collected a spider from my place, and the thing about making observations is you need to isolate it from all of the other background noise. And Courtney, in her video, suggested that you take a jar and maybe put some type of ruler or reference, like a penny, in the bottom of it, and then paint the outside of the jar white, so that when you take a picture, you're just taking a picture of the insect, for example, and that helps with the identification.
Great. Okay, I haven't seen any more questions come in on the chat. If anyone would want to, if you want to unmute and ask questions, please do. Because we're kind of wrapping up here, and if you want to ask your questions without going through chat. Looks like we're good. Like everybody's ready.
Yeah, I've got a question, or just want a clarification. I think you said that we don't have to specify any project to be in the city challenge.
That's correct.
So it's just that date range and the location then.
Right.
Okay. And people should remember that there are other projects out there, and if you do specify those, I mean, if you're getting hurt, frogs or snakes, that would work for Idaho. I forget the name of it, but there's one out there for Idaho herpetology,
Right.
Idaho flora, all those things. Those all help, and they also get experts then to take a look at those a lot quicker because they're monitoring these projects.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, Derek. And just to kind of follow up, one of the things that I hope to do once the project is over is to kind of make a guide for doing BioBlitzes and for the resources available in the state and in North Idaho and in the county. So that guide will list all of the projects that we have going on in the state.
George, here's another very important question about
Do
kids.
we list, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Patty.
I was just gonna say real quick, do we list this as volunteer hours for BioBlitz?
With whom are you?
Pat, that's your question.
Master
Oh, Master Naturalist.
Absolutely.
Naturalist.
Yeah, the answer is yes,
Okay.
for sure.
George, another question about kids. Whether it's a teacher with school kids,
Okay.
a grandparent or parent with their kids. How do they get their kids' observations to count?
Yeah, Perky, that's a great question. And I think for the younger kids, the iNaturalist app might be a little too complicated for them. And that's why I mentioned earlier in the presentation that what you can do is download the Seek app and have them run around and point the smartphone at things, and the Seek app will identify it. There is a way to upload images that are taken in Seek into the iNaturalist project. It's not that complicated, but I think it would be easier for children to have a device of their own, an iPad or a smartphone with a Seek app, and then they can run around and help identify new things. And then the parent can then come along with the iNaturalist app and take a photo and upload it that way.
Okay, great. Any other questions here? Looks like through. Oh. Well, it's supposed to rain today, but it hasn't started, and the Native Plant Society's BioBlitz efforts will be next Saturday, a week from today, 1 o'clock at the Pack River Flats Refuge at Sharp Creek Road. So 1 o'clock, and you can come anytime, stay as long as you want. And it doesn't matter if we duplicate observations; they'll all count. Even we'll rack up the observations and hopefully win the trophy.
Yeah, that one last thought. What the organizers don't want us to do is, when we're on a hike, especially some of the longer hikes that people take, is to document every dug fir tree. The object of the City Nature Challenge isn't to document 10,000 dug fir trees. It's to document one dug fir tree along the hike and any other unique specimen that you find. And another question among the organizers was, if 50 people are on a hike, can all 50 people make an observation of the same thing? And the answer is yes. What you want to do is to make unique observations on your own. And if other people are making the same observation, that's perfectly fine as far as the City Nature Challenge goes.
one of the things, speaking as a scientist, one of the problems that scientists face with more data than they can use or analyze is that there's a big sorting process that is required to eliminate duplications and things like that. So even though City Nature Challenge is not specifically designed as a scientific project, ultimately scientific projects require some sort of planning and purpose. And so that I only make that as a plea for those researchers that will wade through the thousands and millions of observations that they are of value. And so it's best maybe if when we get to the Pack River Flat Refuge, we spread out and go in different directions, and then meet up later for a debriefing of what we saw.
Yeah, and that's unfortunately because of COVID. That's one of the things that we haven't been able to do, is to get together and come up with strategies like that. But hopefully we'll be well past it, maybe even by the summer and the fall, if we decide to do another kind of just Bonner County or regional BioBlitz. And certainly, hopefully by next year, we'll have this ironed out, and we'll have specific areas to do BioBlitzes in. Great.
I think we probably need to kind of close down now and let everybody enjoy the rest of the day, and hopefully we'll get some rain that we need desperately, and get ready to go next Friday. So I personally really want to thank George for spearheading this, moving us forward as a group and multiple groups, and just for your enthusiasm for this project. It is so important and so rewarding for all of us that have worked with you on it.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So I wish everybody a great Saturday and a great weekend, and hopefully we'll be all out there BioBlitzing next weekend.
All right.
Bye now.